All right, it is 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to week number 3, which means we're at the halfway point in this introduction to criminal law. Today is Tuesday, August 24th. We have less than a month before this course is over, and I encourage you to get those assignments in. Again, I remind students, one of the critical things is follow the instructions in the module very carefully, and then follow the rubric that I have. I have one column rubric for you. Follow what I asked for, which matches up with the same thing that's in the module. Make sure that you APA citations in the body and references at the end. If you do need some help with APA, remember we have sources in this course, as well as I encourage you to reach out to the tutor and tutor match to be able to get some help with that. The way you find that is if you go to tools. Oh, I gotta share that. You don't see it. Let's go back. Let me share it. Okay, now you can see it. So if you check here, tools, there's tutoring, and you click on it. It's very easy to do, and you can well, this is what I see to create a task where to send you, but I would see how people deal with Grammarly and plagiarism, but also you can go to there and find the information to set you up for tutoring on APA. The other thing you can do is you can go to resources, and you can come down here. Let's see, where is it? Oh, I know. You can go to your School of Justice Studies, and then you can get information here, writing help, APA, all the way down. Reach out to a librarian, and then here we go. Tutoring, where you can set up a tutor match appointment, where you just click on that, and it takes you to where you can set yourself up to get some help there. So I encourage you to do that, because it's something that will help you a whole lot. All right, so now let's get into, let me put it in student mode just for a moment. Okay, so let's look at messages, and you can see messages that were sent. See, Juan sent a message. Am I doing class now? And that was at 7:37 p.m., which he forgot it was Central Standard. He's here now, but there it is. So 9:30 Eastern, 9:30 Eastern time for live classes is actually the same as 8:30 Central. So yeah, so you were a little off there. Well, you were early. You weren't late. Okay. All right. So that's the emails. I sent each of you the link to. That's okay. No apologies. No apologies. Uh, that's all right. No problem at all. I didn't know that your email was going to show up when I did student preview uh, in terms of this, but that's okay. It's all right. You aren't the first one who has done it. I've had people to come in early in the morning, think 8:30 in the morning. So no, no. So you're good. So you don't have to worry about that. This email, I also sent you the PowerPoints, which are for this week, and you should have those. So I'm going to go back here, and I want to exit the student preview now. So I'll go back to the regular view, and well, I don't want to do that. I take that back. I got to go back to the um, the grade book here. Let me do student preview again because I don't want to do that. After I do grade book, then I'll leave it. Okay, so grade book, it tells you the assignments uh, that are due for this week. What type of homicide is this? Um, that's the discussion post. And then assignment spousal rape for week 3 written assignment. And then remember what I told you earlier? You have your quiz, which is equivalent to your midterm. And you'll see that those are due on the 29th. Okay. So, and you'll also see your live classroom lecture is due also. All right, as well. All right. So once you start your quiz, it's timed. And I recommend doing the quiz after you've gone through all the material. And remember what I said, it encompasses module 1, module 2, and module 3. And I mentioned to you to utilize the things that we will talk about in a few minutes about how to get it prepared. We'll talk about that. So anyway, let's first see what the discussion post is for this week. Okay, remember, you must post first, and remember that your initial post is due when? When is your initial post due? Anybody remember? Nope. Initial post. When is your initial post? Tonight. That's right. Every Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. You're thinking about no problem, no apologies, week 1. But so your initial post is due tonight by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Your reply post is Saturday. Yes. All right. So here you're going to read these directions. And then for your initial post as the investigating officer, you're going to determine what criminal charge would you recommend against James. Um, First degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, or voluntary manslaughter. Explain which criminal law is most applicable to this case and why the others are not. All right. I like the fact they use Rick and James. Have you all ever heard of Rick James? You ever heard of Rick James? Okay. Yeah, I had a chance to hang out with him when I was an entertainment attorney and I was representing a guy who had a club. Yep, Freaky Girl. And then Tina Marie was his girlfriend. Um, um, yeah, I did, they did a concert in Chicago, and it was very bizarre. They had two huge uh, joints on the stage. They weren't real. They had smoke and stuff at University of Illinois, Chicago, and so I was up front near that. And then afterwards, we went to the club, and then they wanted to hang out, and I told them I'm not hanging out with them because they were going to do some wild partying. But I gave him my business card, said you might need it because they're going to go out and they're going to have what they called a powder party. You figured that one out. Okay. So I said, oh, that's not my thing. But yeah, Rick James, yeah, he's quite a character. I think both he and Tina Maria passed since then. Super freak. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Because Dave Chappelle does his character. You're right. Yeah, but yeah, he was quite a character. Real nice guy, but just quite a character. So anyway, they used Rick and James and to do this. That's where that originated from. So for your reply post, which is due Saturday, examine another student's post and consider all three potential charges. You know how that works. Pretty much follows the same thing. All right. So you want to get that in. All right. Any question about discussion posts? Okay, I guess not. So now let's look at the written assignment. Now, in the written assignment, um, which by the way, you see it says you have unlimited attempts. What that means, guys, is that if you, for example, have submitted your assignment and then you listen to the lecture and you realize, oh, I better fix this up, or you go back and read it before the due date, you can submit a second attempt. That's what that means when it says unlimited. So you can do that that number of times. All right. So let's look at the assessment before we look at the rubric. So this is a two-part paper. So for the first part, you're going to look at this scenario, and then you're going to answer these three questions. Make sure two questions actually. And it says list the elements of the offense or offenses, explain how they were met. It's a minimum of 2 pages, double spaced, not counting the reference page. Okay. So you're going to list the elements of the offense and explain how they've been met. Explain what type of crimes have been committed. Be sure to explain why the initial responding officer mishandled the case the first time. And then cite your sources in the body. Include a reference page and a cover sheet. APA citation and references are required. Be sure to cite your sources. Very, very, very important. Very important. All right. So you will lose points. You will see if you don't have 2 pages. Then make sure that I know which part you're working on. Like part 1, you can say part 1. You don't have to say what that is. Just say part 1 and then write it. Then when you start part 2, which should be maybe your 3rd page, and this should be at least 1 page, double space, at least, not single space. Get into the habit of doing double space because that's the APA style. All right. So you're going to consider what type of interview questions you would ask the victim to determine what laws have been violated. And here's the scenario. Very short. And to complete this minimum of 1 page, explain how you would approach the interview with Jackie. All right. And what sensitive questions would you ask to determine the nature of the assault of what happened? All right. And then if you need help, you have the guides here that can help you. And then that'll also, by the way, help you with tutoring as well. The other one, online library, APA toolkit, tutoring and writing lab. And then, of course, you'll submit it there as well. So let's look at the rubric. Oh, I'm still in the student preview. Let me come out of that. I thought I was, okay. Oh, I know why. Okay, so let's go to this. Written assignment. Okay, so the same information is there for you there. But then when you get to the rubric, so your criteria in part 1 is to examine the type of crimes, as we said, 2 pages. We already discussed that. In part 2, conduct the interview. Excuse me, explain how the student will approach the interview, how you'd approach it. 1 page minimum requirement, double space. And remember the organizational stuff, the mechanics, the spelling, and written appropriate form. And then, of course, the last part is APA, using credible sources, not sources like Wikipedia or similar generic sources, to get all your points. So if you don't do this, you can lose 1/4 of your grade. So you can end up with 75% of your grade up here, but you don't want that. You don't want that. Any questions about the written assignment? Okay. All right. All right. So make sure that you do that. But remember, to maximize your grades, always pay attention um, to the rubric, because that's how you're going to get the best grades. And of course, you know when that's due. That's due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Let's go to the calendar. And the month view. And here's where we are down here. Look at where we are. We're all the way at the 24th. So initial post is due tonight. Your live lecture, for people who can't find it, the link, if you were to scroll down, there it is right there. You click on that and it'll lead you right into where we are now. I won't click on it because it'll have a double sound in it and it'll mess up the recording. And then your discussion post, reply post, that's due on Saturday. Your quiz will be due, and then your written assignment. And so you find yourself in a situation with the quiz. Remember what I told you. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more, but I can't click on it. All right, so that's it. Notice then that we go to September next. Next week we start September. And you only have a couple of them because the 17th is when class actually ends. Okay? Not the 18th, not the 19th. So you want to make sure that you satisfy that. All right, let's go back. Now, Now, the quiz, I can't click on it because if I do, it's going to start showing you the questions, and I don't want to do that. But I can tell you that it's a 30-minute quiz. And like I said, the best way to prepare for it is what I've been saying in weeks 1, 2 about it, and I'll repeat it again tonight when we get down here using key terms and these practices, and then finally the practice quiz, and then there's a survey, end of term survey, and not end of term, midterm survey that we appreciate if you can do that as well. All right, so those are the assignments for the week. So let's scroll down. Of course, if you want to find a live recording, it's going to be here. The link, this will be taken out, and it will turn into the link that of what we're recording now. And of course, you guys get that through email as well. So some of you never look at this. And then it again reminds you of the time of the lecture. And then of course, click on that and it takes you into the lecture. Okay. Then your live classroom phrase that I'm going to give you tonight will be due as well. It says no due date. Oh, should be a due date in there. Should be a due date. I thought we had a due date in the calendar. Let's see. I got to go back and look at the calendar, because if not, I got to make sure that you do have one. Yeah, I got it for the 29th. So I don't know why it's not showing up in the assignment. Okay. This new system that they got in here kind of gets wacky. I'm going to look at something. Yeah, it says due date 8/29. Okay, so anyway, I don't know why it doesn't say that. All right, for live classroom, let me do this. I'll see what happened here. Okay, that's how I fix that. All right, so anyway, you already knew that though anyway. So your key phrase there. All right, and there it is now. Right there, the 29th. Okay, so let's talk about the topics. So last week we talked about crimes against property. Today, crimes against a person. And homicide is very simply killing of a person. And homicide could be legal or not. Justifiable homicide is legal. Unlawful homicide is murder itself. So, for example, when a police officer uses deadly force to prevent great bodily harm or death to themselves or another, it's justifiable homicide. Still homicide, but it's justifiable and not a crime. In contrast, it says when an upset boyfriend intentionally kills his girlfriend because he believes she has cheated on him, it's unlawful and it's called murder at that particular time. So murder is the unlawful killing of a person by another. Okay. So first degree murder involves two elements: causing the death of another person with premeditation and intent to kill that person. In other words, that premeditation means that you thought about it. We call it scienter, having knowledge, knowing, and you intended to kill that person. So, um, for example, it says if it was determined that the killer had told a person of their intent to kill and then carries out the act, the statement itself would demonstrate premeditation and could be used to support the intent. So your mouth can get you in trouble. If the killer is witnessed screaming, "You're going to die," and then fires a gun, then that's intentional versus accidental, and it's murder. Okay. So murder, first degree murder, is easy to determine. Now, second degree murder, on the other hand, in most jurisdictions is called voluntary manslaughter. So, and with that, it says that, like the example given for the state of Colorado, the person knowingly caused the death of another. Now, the element of second degree murder does not require premeditation, but it still would include intentional killing of a person. So if there's no premeditation involved, it's second degree murder, or we refer to it as voluntary manslaughter. All right. Intent is missing, but can occur in the heat of passion. Let's say, for example, a person um, kills a person. They walk in, a guy walks in his house and finds his wife in the bed with another man, and he kills them. Because of what he witnessed, he didn't intend on doing that, but he does that instinctively. Now, it has to be done right away. It's not done at a later time. If you do it at a later time, then it's going to be premeditation, and then you'd have first degree murder. So it'd be difficult to lessen the severity of a murder in this concept if Bob came home to find his wife in bed, but then hunted Jim down the next day. Just what I said a few minutes ago. You guys got that? You want to have that very important. You got the distinction? Do you have questions about it? Okay, are you there? Or are you just having trouble getting the answers out? Okay, I'll just keep moving. Um, so voluntary manslaughter is intentionally killing of another in a state of passion produced by adequate provocation. All right. Now, special circumstances is a term used to determine when there are intervening factors that may lessen or increase the severity of the offense. And these are just a few, and you might need to know these. Aggravating to make first degree homicide for special circumstances. So two aggravating factors to, very simply, first degree is applying and could result in the death penalty in jurisdictions that have death penalty. Future dangerousness, the probability that the defendant or the person charged will commit offenses in the future, And it was outrageous, wanton, vile, horrible, inhumane, involved torture, depravity of mind, such as maybe like chopping somebody's head off or chopping them up in pieces like that, those kinds of things. If neither of the aggravating factors are present in this state, Virginia, first degree homicide case, then the defendant is sentenced to life and not death. All right. Second degree homicide, special circumstances. Two common circumstances that make up the element of knowingly in the second degree murder are adequate provocation. So that occurs as we give this example about Bob. Bob comes home and finds Jim in bed with his wife. Enraged, Bob shoots and kills him. Bob would likely argue adequate provocation, and that was what I was talking about earlier, and would result in voluntary manslaughter as opposed to first degree murder. Or if there's coercion or necessity, death caused because the actor was forced to cause it. For example, Jack is taken hostage and the hostage taker has a gun to his head. The hostage taker tells Jack, shoot Bob or I will kill you myself. Under such coercion or duress, Jack shoots Bob. Well, then he would argue that he was forced at gunpoint. Right? And then these are some affirmative defenses that go with it as well. All right. So now, involuntary manslaughter. Remember, we talked about voluntary. Involuntary manslaughter pretty much occurs most of the time in drunk driving cases or in situations where a person is under the influence. So when a person kills another and there is neither premeditation or malice, but their actions were reckless, this is involuntary manslaughter. That's why, like speeding with a person in a car and they die, and those kinds of things, or operating in a situation. Okay, all right. So involuntary manslaughter involves such things as reckless homicide or by intoxicated person in drunk driving cases, as I said a few minutes ago. So the levels of recklessness can be differentiated by the terms utter disregard or utter indifference. That is, the person does something without regard to life, like, for example, speeding or something like that, trying to show off in front of somebody. Here we go. Involuntary manslaughter. It's 11:30 a.m. on a clear, cold January day. The streets are dry. A 23-year-old named Jim, who is intoxicated. So when you get to that point, that's when you start looking at involuntary, is operating his vehicle on a residential street with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. His girlfriend seated next to him there, she's also drunk. So to impress her, he goes and presses the metal up to 80 miles an hour, drives through a stop sign, collides with a person, and they're killed. So Jim demonstrated utter disregard for human life in his actions as well. All right. The one punch homicide, which involves where a punch has been used and a person intentionally batters that person, but that single punch results in the person's death. You just look at these clips and you can see that. All right. So let's move on to battery. Now, so battery is very simple. It can be a felony or it could be a misdemeanor. So simple battery, when a minor injury occurs, and for a misdemeanor, a person can go to jail for up to a year. If it's aggravated battery, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, then that person can go to jail under a felony a longer period of time. So aggravated, and see, I don't like the way they do this. Assault and battery. Now, here's the definition of an assault. So here, well, let's start with the elements of a battery. Intentional act, injuring someone without their consent. That's it. Doesn't matter whether it's major or minor, it's a battery. All right. Not accidentally bumping into someone, but reaching your hand up to hit them. Now, on the other hand, the assault is when you raise your hand to create a reasonable belief that you're going to make contact with that person to injure them. But no physical contact is needed. Okay. So some jurisdictions use assault and battery the same. It's very confusing. So for purposes of thinking about understanding assault is before you make contact. Battery is when you make the contact. Very, very simply that. All this stuff down here actually talks about that. Intention, like the statutes in Wisconsin: bodily harm, physical pain or injury, or impairment of physical condition. Evidence of bodily harm is supported by what the victim reports. Okay. So you get to serious bodily harm, where you begin to injure that person severely. The last thing I'm going to talk about in terms of this is mayhem. Mayhem is what we call bodily harm, where a person deprives a person of a member of their body, a part of their body, or disables them, or disfigures them, does something to permanently leave a mark on them, such as pouring acid on someone, hot water, or something like that. Look at the example here, which is interesting that they use about Angela, who 18-year-old girl was at a party with her friend, her male friend, Drake. They both were drunk. And Angela and Drake participated in a bizarre ritual in a cult-like situation where with with Angela's consent participation, Drake slits her wrist and drinks her blood. Then, to clearly show their commitment to the band, Angela allows him to cut off her pinky finger with a meat cleaver. Angela eventually becomes lightheaded and passes off, and then, at the hospital. So did Drake commit mayhem against Angela? Yes. The answer is yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. The last thing they say is, well, kind of, sort of. Battery occurs between complete strangers and even among those who love each other. And that pretty much gets into domestic violence. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay. And if you listen to my story, Adversity Springboard to Success, I know about that. And here it comes. This is the next to the last topic. So when does domestic violence take place? First of all, you must have a domestic relationship. In most states, a battery occurs between two adults who are at least 18 years or old, who live together, that is intimate partners, or have lived together and have a child, or have a child in common. Don't have to be a child. If the relationship exists, then the offense battery would become domestic because it happened within the domestic relationship. So the relationship is what causes it to go into that. Domestic violence is probably one of the most serious of offenses, as if you listen to my story, you'll see that's how I lost my parents in one of those situations. And I witnessed domestic violence quite frequently. And as a police officer, I had to deal with it. As a law enforcement officer, one of the worst calls that you can get is a domestic call, because what you will discover if you ever go into law enforcement is that you will be trained to watch the person even that called you, because they will attack you even though they've been beat up or assaulted by their partner. And domestic violence is gender neutral. It's male against female, or female against male, or female against female. All right. So the general understanding about the domestic relationship and how it's established, and it could be physical violence, sexual assault, emotional and economic harm, such as taking the person's money and not allowing them access to it. But it's very broad. It's broad. But the key thing that you need to remember is that two adults, at least 18 years or older, who have lived together or live together or have a child in common. That's the main thing. All this other stuff down here is additional stuff. Those are the main things that you need to be aware of for domestic violence. Okay. Any questions about domestic violence? Okay. So now we're going to talk about sexual assault crimes as we finish up. Sexual assault crimes come about. And you see that hand up, no? No means no. It's very simple command or statement. Sexual assault does not require actual intercourse, but includes unlawful touching of the private area of an individual without their consent. Okay, so sex crimes are very sensitive due to the nature of the offenses, and when investigators are involved, it is imperative that they express empathy and sensitivity when dealing with the victims. Uh, I can tell you that in years past, it changed, that when a person was slow to come to report a sexual assault is because it would flip on them, and it would flip on them even in court. Now that's changed because of the rape shield laws, which we're going to conclude by talking about that in a few minutes. So it says the crucial role that law enforcement plays is helping the victims to get help, services. And notice it said victims, the person who committed the assault, as well as the person who was assaulted, to get help and have what they call advocates that are there for especially the victim. When I say the victim, I'm talking about the person who was the subject of the uh, sexual assault. Can have a long-term effect on people. So sexual assault is really one that is solved a lot of times by dealing with um, collecting DNA evidence and things of that nature. Now, there are degrees of criminal sexual assault that take place in most jurisdictions. And they talk about um, first degree sexual assault. And you'll see if you read these over that they're the more severe. And look at the age of the victim. And the defendant is more than 3 years older. And then you see the things that take place. Is force or force over that individual. All right. Second degree, on the other hand, um, is defined as the intentional touching or fondling of a person's private parts, by any part of the person's other person's body or any object they use. Third degree is the person under 13 and more than 3 years, and it deals with the relationship of the parties. So, example is a parent, a foster parent, a teacher, a counselor, uh, a member of the clergy, psychotherapist, a person who's been placed in a position of trust that takes advantage of an individual. And it decreases fourth from a person engaged in sexual assault under the same circumstances outlined above as right here. And then finally, fifth degree, uh, prohibits a person from engaging in non-consensual sexual assault or engaging in masturbation or lewd exhibition of flashing, basically, in the presence of a person. That's the lowest one. We conclude by talking about two things. Number one, statutory rape. Statutory rape is what we call a strict liability crime. The prosecution only has to prove that the person was a minor. Okay? It doesn't require showing of intent or I didn't know. The only thing that has to be done is to provide proof of the age. Even if the person lied to you, you can still be guilty of statutory rape. And it varies in terms of jurisdictions. So I'm not going to get into the specific, but it is what we call a strict liability laws. They don't require intent to be shown. Now, because sex crimes are reported and they're very sensitive, as I said at the very beginning, people were unwilling to come forward to address this issue. So states have enacted what we call rape shield laws. And the purpose of these laws is to encourage victims to report sexual abuse without fear that their prior sexual conduct or relationship would be used against them in court. For example, a defendant will likely not be able to introduce the fact that a victim of sexual assault has a loose reputation when it comes to sexual activity. Not admissible. Can't bring it up at all. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. All right. So those are crimes against persons: sexual assault, domestic violence, battery, and homicide. So now, to get ready for this exam, I told you each week to learn these key terms and be able to know them, because we talked about all of them. Then you'll be able to discover them in some of the practice things that we're going to do. All right. So we put this in here to help you prepare. So here are some simple for practice of special circumstances. Remember we talked about practice of special circumstances or special circumstances. Let's try this one. So I'm going to ask you to tell me, Jane and Phil have been married for 10 years and have 2 children together. Jane also has a drinking problem. Jane came home drunk and argued with Phil. Phil threatened to leave Jane and take the children if she didn't get help. Enraged, Jane shot Phil and fled the house. What special circumstances would Jane probably claim? Which one? Any answers? Coercion, a lot of people think that. Adequate provocation would likely be claimed in this case. So it would be adequate provocation. That's what she would use. Some people would say coercion or necessity, but it wouldn't be right. So it's adequate provocation. And the reason why is because she was provoked by Phil taking the kids. Mary and John had been married for 15 years. Mary discovers that John had been having an affair for the past year. They both argue and sleep in separate beds. In the middle of the night, still very upset, Mary stabs John with a knife while he's asleep. John survives, and Mary tells police she couldn't control herself. What would she likely claim? Adequate provocation. Mary was so upset over what happened. So those are the kind of things that you get. I don't know if you're there or I'm just doing this by myself, but because I'm not getting any responses. Practice for homicide classifications. Again, this is based on the information. Frank has a long-standing hatred for Kim. Frank purchased a handgun and hid behind the bushes outside of Kim's apartment. When Kim exited, he shot and killed her. How about premeditation? So would that be first-degree murder? Yes. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to do it anymore. So you do each of those. And then finally, the practice quiz. And I said this before. Some of these questions, like the ones we just went over, and these here will be on the exam. You'll see them. I already told you from 1 and 2 as well. The intent to cause death with premeditation is considered what type of murder? Yep. So you go through each of these and practice them. Okay, then there is a survey. Okay, so anyway, I didn't get any responses, so I don't know if you're there, because sometimes students do sign in and then they get busy doing other stuff, which is not very good, but it happens. Any questions? Okay, well, the key word that I'm going to give you tonight is homicide. So that's it. So give me homicide and you'll get your points. Um, and as I said before, remember, take your time and do your exam because you'll have one shot at that as well. All right. So I'm going to say good night at this time. And I'll see you next week at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Good night.